is Chris Neff. I'm the Director of Sports Performance here at Norfolk State, and I arrived here in January 2015. Prior to arriving here at Norfolk State, primarily worked at a sports performance gym in Richmond, where we train athletes ranging from 7 years old through high school, college, even professional athletes. And also worked at University of Richmond, where we worked with the football team, baseball team, and women's lacrosse teams primarily. Took them through their speed and strength training there to prepare them for their seasons. 2014 season, I spent the year with Coach Scott at Virginia State. I served in the same position as the Director of Strength and Conditioning for the football team. We spent 1 year there in 2014, and we were fortunate enough to win the CIAA championship, as well as qualify for the Division II championship playoffs, first time in school history, and also the first victory in the Division II playoffs as well. So we were very fortunate to have a successful season that year. When we arrived here at Norfolk State, that we could tell there were very good athletes here. There's very good talent here, and the kids wanted to work really hard. So our goal and our priorities were to teach them the way we worked, the way we ran things, and the way we approached different things, whether it be in the weight room, whether it be in the classroom, study hall, practice. We didn't set out to change the culture. We just set out to develop our culture and set our culture into place so that we could be successful in the classroom, in training, and on the football field as well. And we started off winter training. We had about a 4-week block where it was just primarily strength and conditioning training. Then we transitioned to mat drills and inside training. So we're working more sport-specific, football-specific drills, as well as getting them ready and prepared to practice in the spring. Spring ball comes, and now we're obviously in kind of a modified in-season plan where they're practicing 2-3 times a week, they're scrimmaging once a week, and we're working out training still 2 to 3 times a week as well. And again, it's coming in and setting our tempo. The way we run strength training is a very high tempo. It's one thing after another. We're not standing around very much. The guys know that they can't sit down in the weight room. You sit down in the weight room, it's 50 up downs right off the bat. So they know they're constantly moving, and that's because that's the way Coach Scott, he plans his practices. They're constantly moving. They're always doing something. 5-minute periods. They're on to the next thing. So for our goal as a sports performance staff is to prepare them for those practices so they're able to practice better, so they're able to play better. My philosophy in the weight room is every athlete needs certain movements. They have certain fundamental movements that every athlete does, whether what sport they're playing, male, female. They have certain things that they need to be able to do. Things like a squat, a pull from the ground, overhead pull, push horizontally, pull horizontally, and things like that, where they're constantly using different. We try to think more in movements instead of muscles. We think compound movements where we're involving more than one muscle group at a time. Because nothing in sports is where it's one muscle isolated for that specific time. They're always using at least more than one muscle. 99% of the time, it's total body. So most workouts, most training sessions are going to be full body workouts because that's the way we practice, that's the way we play. So we want to mimic that as much as we can. Again, for football, we're at very high tempo, we're very high pace, and obviously we're still getting our strength work in there as well, where we have a little bit more recovery time in between sets, but they're doing something, so let's say quote unquote prehab. They're doing something for their knees to keep their knees healthy in between sets of squats. Or if they're bench pressing, they're doing a reset movement on their back to make sure they're not anteriorly pulled forward on their shoulders. So we're constantly doing something. It might not be a max effort exercise or drill every time, but they're constantly doing something. That way we can get as much work as we can done in that period. Other sports have different demands, so we train them maybe a little bit differently. Baseballs are very, most plays or most actions occur very quickly, and then they have a long rest period. Pitching is it's one of the most the fastest movement in sports, where they're throwing the ball for half a second, and then they get 30 seconds in between the rest. So we want to do training and sprints to mimic that, where they're doing a high output sprint and they get enough rest to recover. So they're able to do that, more times than we were before, and that way when they get into a game, they're able to throw longer in the games and throw those complete games and so like that. And they will throw the same velocity as they were in the first inning as they were in the ninth inning because they've developed those energy systems to train that. So we don't train our athletes or baseball players to do long, slow conditioning. That's not what really baseball is about. Obviously, you need that aerobic, threshold and foundation there, but primarily we want to get them to the point where they're doing those high output movements over a longer period of time, be able to sustain that effort over that period of time. So throughout the training year, our sports will go through different phases. They have their in-season, obviously, training cycle. They have their post-season or right after the season training cycle. They have their quote-unquote off-season, which we kind of just say out of season. We don't, we're not taking the time off, so it's kind of a different way to think about it. You're not off-season; it's kind of just out of the season training. And then you have your preseason, right? Those 6 to 12 weeks right before the season starts. That's pretty the most important time because you're right before the season starts. You want to make sure you're primed and ready to go for that season. So in season, we do basically just a lower volume of what they've been doing normally. We don't really change a whole lot. We don't change all the exercises up and give them anything different. We won't incorporate anything new to them, so they don't have to learn anything new. They've already done all the exercises before, so they know exactly what they got to do. There's no explanation for it. It's just right to it, and they know exactly what they got to do. And obviously just the volume's reduced a little bit to accommodate the practices and the games and that sort of thing. But we want to keep doing what we've been doing. Post-season, right after the season ends, take back off a little bit, give them a little break. Mentally, they're drained from a hard season, and so we'll give them a little bit of time to recover. We don't take too much time off and lose all the work we just gained through the season and off season and out of season. So, we get them in, we basically just get them moving, that's a great time to work on mobility, or we're improving our movement patterns, and then we transition to the out of season phase where it's that long, really big grind that we have for those guys where we're trying to make the most gains in the weight room, improve all our numbers, make the most improvements in our speed test as well. That's kind of a big important time for us as a sports performance staff to do those things. And then obviously we get in that preseason where we're transitioning all the work we did in the weight room and on the conditioning track. We're going to transition that into their sport. How can we take all that work we did and transition now to where it's going to work for them on the field and improve their game? That's ultimately what we're about. We're not just about improving numbers. We don't want to just because you increase your squat doesn't really make you a better athlete or a better player. You got to take that strength you gained and you got to be able to transition that into your sport. And that's what ultimately we have to do as a staff to do that, is to transition all the work we do in here, and they're able to take that, now they're able to take that work they've done, now they're able to get the most out of that work they've done throughout the whole out of season phase. So each training session, most of the time they come in, obviously we're going to hit some type of warm up that we're coming in, we're just getting the body ready. We're prepping the body to do some work, whether it's a hard training session or maybe it's just a light mobility recovery session. We're coming in and just getting stretched out. Got to do something where they're coming off from school, coming out of classroom, or waking out of bed sometimes at 5 a.m. They got to come in here and we got to get them ready to work. So we'll come in and do some light calisthenics, some light movements, different movement patterns based on what the training session is going to be for that day. So if we're doing, let's say a speed training session, we're going to do some fast twitch movements off the bat. Get those muscles firing, get them moving, where they're woken up and those fast twitch muscle fibers are ready to go. They're ready to do some work. So depending on what the day is going to dictate what that warm is going to be. After that warm up, we'll kind of go through the guys, hey, this is what we're doing today. So that way they know exactly what they have to do that day. There's no questions. They're not, hey, what's the day going to be like? Is it going to be a conditioning day? And there's no questions for them. They know exactly what they have to do, just like knowing exactly what kind of play you have to run. If you don't know the play, you're not going to perform very well. So we want to tell them, hey, this is what we're doing. It's going to be hard, or it's going to be, hey, this is an easy day. I want you guys to get in here and just break a sweat and get moving, and let's recover a little bit. So we'll tell them that, right off the bat. And then also get into the training session where they're doing, maybe we're teaching them something that day. Maybe we're teaching them a power clean progression. Or maybe we're teaching them a totally new movement they haven't done before. That's usually when we'll do that in the beginning, where they're kind of fresh, they're not worn out yet. We'll teach those things, the new movements to them. We'll get into the training session, we'll get it going. Each athlete has their own workout sheet for that whole week. So they have every workout on that sheet. So they know exactly what they have to do They know exactly what numbers they have to hit for that day, and they record everything on there. So they know next week, okay, I did 100 pounds on this exercise. I'm gonna try and see if I do 105, or maybe try and do 100 pounds for another rep. So what have you. So we're recording those numbers so we know exactly how we're improving, if we're improving, and so they know, and they're accountable for their own improvement as well. After kind of that main training session is finished up, they kind of get to the end of it, it might be a team competition for that day. So there might be something just where we're saying, hey, it's you versus this guy, who's gonna win? Somebody's gonna win, somebody's gonna lose. And you know, that's what sports is about. It's about that competition, and we wanna help breed that competition too, to where they're walking out of here, and if they lost that competition, they're a little salty about it, and they get on each other. You know, every team, they get on each other. Because ultimately, if you're an athlete, you're competitive. If you're not competitive, then you shouldn't be playing sports. So we want to kind of breed that competition, get that going to where now they're pushing each other a little bit, and now it's not so much on us coaches. Because ultimately, if your teammate's saying something to you, that's almost worse than a coach saying something to you. Coach is always going to be on you as an athlete. But if your teammate's seeing something out of you that you're not doing, and he points it out to you, hey, you didn't finish the line on that sprint, or you slacked on that rep, or I didn't like your effort on that, that ultimately hits you a lot harder than as a coach saying that. So we ultimately want to breed that competition and that accountability from one player to the next, to where they're on each other now, and so they're being accountable now for their own training session. And then we'll finish up. You know, maybe it's a little breakdown each team has. You know, maybe they have their own little thing they come up with. We might do some light stretching depending on the day, just to kind of again bring them down. Now we woke them up with the warm up, we got them going. We want to kind of bring them down back to the normal steady state, to where we're kick-starting that recovery process, to where they're slowing back down and everything's getting going. And the recovery process already started. We don't want to leave them walking out of here all jacked up too much, to where they're just fired up the rest of the day and they can't sit still. We want to bring them back down to normal, however their normal state is, to where that recovery process has already started. We're not wasting time for that.